Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by ICOM. Heard it, worked it, logged it. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about ICOM radios.
It's Ham Radio.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 166. Equinox, a science fiction book with ham radio, recorded live on Thursday, May 23rd, 2019. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight, we're joined by author D.M. Barrett in for ECW, and we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week, we were live in Dayton, bringing you the last-minute details about Hamvention, and hope you've recovered. It's taken a couple of days to get everything back in place and caught up on all the email and all that kind of thing, but finally starting to recover from Hamvention, so I hope you were able to enjoy it. And if you couldn't go, I hope you were able to at least enjoy some of the media that were there over Hamvention weekend. And if you missed the show, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. And, of course, we're rebroadcast on WTWW 5085 AM Saturday evenings at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so you can check that out. One thing coming up, I want to remind you, 100 watts in a wire, or as we called it last week, 100 wires in a what? Has a tune-up activity. It's going to be field day before too long, and tune-up is kind of check out your antennas, get some reports, and just get on the air. And there's some prizes involved and some other things. So that's June 7th through 9th. So that's coming up. So if you're interested in running the tune-up with the 100 watts in a wire, folks, June 7th through 9th is when that will take place. We'll talk more about that here in the next couple of weeks as that gets closer. So tonight, Dennis Barrett, Dr. Dennis Barrett in for ECW is with us. We'll talk about his new book, so get your questions ready to go, and we'll give you the phone number for that. If you're listening to us live on Thursday night, you can give us a call later on in the show after we do the interview. And that phone number to call is 812-650-9556 tonight. Again, 812-650-9556 is the phone number to call, or you can type to us on Twitter. We'll check at Ham Talk Live on Twitter as the night goes on. And if you're on Spreaker, you can type to us on there as well. And if you're listening to the podcast or the rebroadcast over on WTWW, we're not going to be there because it's Thursday night now, and you'll be hearing this at a different time. So I'll be back with Dennis right after this word from ICOM America right here on Ham Talk Live. Create your own band opening. ICOM's newest SDR transceiver, the IC9700, is coming soon. This radio is bringing direct sampling to the UHF-VHF weak signal world. The IC9700 all-mode transceiver is loaded with innovative features such as dedicated amateur satellite operation, color touchscreen, D-Star capability built right in, RF direct sampling on the 2-meter and 70-centimeter bands, dual independent independent receivers capable of full duplex operation as well as dual watch, and 100 watts max power on 2 meters, 75 watts max on 70 centimeters, and 10 watts max on 1.2 gigahertz. Pack your bags because the Dayton Hamvention is coming up. From May 17th to 19th at the Greene County Fairgrounds and Expo Center, you can see the latest and greatest ICOM gear and meet hams from all over the world. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on ICOM radios.
Ham Talk Live, now with 30% less calories and no trans fat.
Well, thanks to ICOM for bringing you Ham Talk Live. It was good to hang out with them at Hamvention this past weekend. Obviously, that's not coming up this weekend anymore, but it's good to hang out with them and be at the ICOM booth there for a while. And they were showing off all kinds of good things and giving away some stuff, too. My goodness. So hope you had a chance to check that out. But if you haven't, go over to icomamerica.com/amateur and you can see all their new goodies. Well, tonight with us is Dennis Barrett, PhD, a retired engineering and management consultant that resides in Land O'Lakes, Florida. He's the author of the science fiction book Equinox that has taken amateur and shortwave radio into the cultural mainstream in its version of a limited alien invasion storyline, and it's the book is available on Kindle, Amazon, and Barnes and Noble. So, Dennis, good evening. Welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Well, thank you, Neil. I'm excited about being here, and I appreciate the invitation, and look forward to having a discussion with you.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about the idea for how this book came about, Equinox. How did you get the idea to write this?
Well, the book is based on two source materials. One is Revelation chapter 9, is primarily 1 through about 11, where the book speaks about an actual locust invasion of 5 months and how it will happen and what its effect will be. It doesn't say how it ends up, but apparently it ends up favorably. And then there's a Cherokee rattlesnake prophecy of the 1800s, early 1800s, which speaks to two constellations being at war, two groups in two constellations being at war. Could very well just be an astrological situation, but there's a lot of things in that's relevant to this. So one day I decided I would come up with a storyline. I did not intend to write a book. I intended to write a narrative that could be turned into a television show. And that's what, brought me to this. The ham radio part was, I think, necessary to the storyline because you've got a group of resistance people that's founded at a shortwave station, and shortwave and amateur radio seem like logical tools in this resistance movement.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about how ham radio ties into this storyline.
Well, it's patterned after the station you have your show broadcast on Saturday afternoons, WTWW. Those folks are amateur radio operators who are at a shortwave station. I've spent time there, and they have a radio station there. And being a worldwide radio station on the international shortwave, they pick up on the situation in Florida, the disaster that's taking place there, and they get on the radio, which was an ICOM 7800, by the way. I guess that's the brand of choice of the resistance. And they talk to some hams in Florida and see what's happening. They begin to report what they've got. There's pretty much a shutdown of the national media and everything because of the nature of the disaster, the blast. and one of the guys becomes a kind of an actor of sorts. He becomes the colonel, the leader of the resistance, just to kind of talk about it. Ultimately becomes the real colonel that leads the fight. So that was the genesis of it. Ham radio is used throughout the book. It's not a CQ magazine article. If you want that, Rich puts out a real good magazine.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I'm pitching for Rich. But if you're expecting to go in and find, 50% about ham radio and 50% about the plot line, it's not there. But what it does, I think, is people who are interested in, sci-fi, religious fiction, alien invasion fiction, science fiction generally, post-apocalyptic fiction. It puts ham radio and shortwave in a very positive light, and it shows, hey, if things really get bad, here's what you can count on. Shortwave radio to keep you informed, and ham radio to keep the people that are on the ground informed, especially when, nothing else is available. So I think when people say it blends science fiction with amateur radio, I think that's a good term. It is blended, but it is not exclusive ham radio. It's not one of the books you can buy from ARRL that with the schematics in it that tells you how to build things.
It doesn't tell you how to build the ICOM IC 7800. So
no, it's not gonna tell you how to build one, but it will tell you it's a good radio, and they use it in a tight.
So you've kind of blended it in, and it makes me think of some of the things I do, and some of the conversations we have on this show about bringing new people into ham radio and bringing young people especially into ham radio, because that's pretty much what I do. Is you may not get everybody licensed, you may not get everybody being a ham radio operator, but if they're aware of ham radio and what it does, sometimes those people end up on homeowners association boards.
Yeah, you are exactly right, Neil. One of the things about the book Equinox is it's selling to a non-ham audience. I looking at the numbers and where they're coming from. The first 2 weeks, the book was #1 in Germany, an English book that was #1 in Germany, #2 in the UK, #3 in the US, #3 in Canada, #5 in Australia, and it stayed there, kind of like a camel's with a lot of humps. It goes up and down, but it's touching a genre that is not populated by a lot of ham operators. And as I look at the people that are ham operators that are buying the book or downloading the book, it's a lot of people that obviously don't read a lot of ebooks and may not read a lot of books generally. Now, I'm not being critical, because I prefer to read a nonfiction book over a fiction book most of the time. But I think it is getting to a lot of people who are not in the avocation. They're not in the hobby, but they do find out that it is important and necessary at times.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how the book's doing and how people can get a hold of it. You had it out here for just really a short time, and it's really kind of taken off.
Neil, we've been out about 6 weeks, and it's done great. Just a couple of weeks ago, it dropped a little bit for the last few days. It's still in the top 25 books in the genre, but it's sold. My wife told me this morning a little over 7,000 copies. 98% of those are the ebook version, and the rest is the paperback version. There are 800,000 to 1 million current ebooks on Amazon, and it's disputed as to whether it's 800,000, 900,000, 1 million. But I looked before the show, we were 64,000 of all ebooks that they sell, and that puts us in the top 8%. Now, when I got to number 3 in the genre, number 4 in the genre, and I was at number 3, the book that was having the hardest time to overcome was a book written in 1995 by two gentlemen, Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. The book's called Left Behind. There's been a movie of it, older movie, and then there was a reboot of that movie in 2014. So, in order to get on up on the charts in the religious science fiction, I've got to get past those guys, and that's going to be a real formidable task. So,
that will. There's a lot of fans of that Left Behind series.
Oh, it's great. It's really good. I watched the movie a few weeks ago, the rebooted movie. One thing I wanted to talk just a little more about is about criticisms. And there are some valid criticisms about this book. One of the things that people found out is when you download this book, it's set by Kindle to play on a cell phone, on a Kindle, on a computer screen, on a tablet, an iPad. It goes up as a PDF, which locks the format. Nothing can change. When they get it and put it in the downloadable format, you'll get aberrant spacing in some of the words. You'll get extra line occasionally. It's very distracting. It's not my editing. It has nothing to do with me. It's just the way it is. They've discussed this on QRZ thread, and people explain this. But I want to get it out there that it's not a romance novel that you sit on the beach and read while you rest. And this is one you need to spend a little time with. And that's terrible. If I could do something about that formatting, I would. But if you read it and you like what you're getting, order the paperback. I know it's more expensive, but it is formatted perfectly. So there's a criticism about that's justified. There's some other criticism. Some people don't really care for the storyline. One guy said that it wasn't ham radio enough, that he liked to read things like articles in CQ magazine. So Rich Moseson may should go out and pull 20 articles and do like a Sports Illustrated edition. They call it the best of CQ or something. So he was right, in saying what he said. It is not a technical ham radio manual, but but if you want to know about the book and you say, okay, this guy's touting this book, go on QRZ. They've got an article on a thread. There's about 40 comments on it, and I think that Neil, that would give you a good idea if you hadn't had a chance to read the book. Or thinking about reading it or spending your money, that would give you a good idea about how it is and what people like and how they perceive it. And I live and die by what they say, because they're people that are hams and they put their call signs out there. They're identifiable online. They're not trolls causing problems. So, but I'm real happy with everything right now. But as you know, if you're doing anything creative in ham radio, you better have thick skin, because only mommy and daddy are going to pat you on the head and on the back. You're going to get some criticism if you do anything but sit at home and hunker down. Now you talk, because I've talked too much.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, if they want a ham radio story, that's about ham radio and fiction, then it's time to pull out the old CQ Ghost Ship and Death Valley QTH and Killed by QRM. But
there you go. There you go.
There's a place for for this and working ham radio into normal mainstream, well, I shouldn't say normal because it's sci-fi and I'm a sci-fi fan, but working it into the mainstream so that it doesn't seem like it's just some bunch of weirdos out there that get on AM with their big tube radios, it's not that way. And so it's good to get some of that in the mainstream. Again, not everybody is going to get into ham radio, but if they have an awareness of it, that can be very helpful.
That was my hope by including ham radio and shortwave into the storyline. Shortwave, for example, is not a big deal in most of the United States. They're either going to go with satellite radio or terrestrial radio. But in the rest of the world, shortwave is a big deal. The Texan radio company out of China builds 30,000 shortwave sets a day for, different people that market different brands. So there's a lot of people out there listening to shortwave. Apparently there's a lot of people reading the SWLing magazine or newsletter that comes out of North Carolina, because they mentioned the thing, and I think about half of the ham radio clubs in the country tagged their article and put it on their web pages. So shortwave, even though we as hams may not recognize it as being real important, it's really important in the rest of the world. So just because, we don't use it, just like the public doesn't all have ham radio license, you can still appreciate the value and the importance of the hobby and the technology.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, Dennis, we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back, and we'll see if we have some phone calls and some tweets. So if you have a question, give us a call at 812-650-9556, or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live, and I'll be back with Dennis right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live.
Thank you for a lovely dinner.
Aren't you going to ask me in to solder some PL259s?
Well, I do have some from Tower Electronics.
How can I refuse?
Consider the sophisticated quality of PL259s from Tower Electronics. From soldering supplies to adapters, connectors to cables, and all types of connectors, Tower Electronics has the parts you're looking for.
Well?
Just one more connector? You know I love your PL259s.
Then by all means, take some with you.
Don't be caught without PL259s. Visit Tower Electronics at a hamfest near you, or visit them online anytime at pl-259.com, or call 920-435-2973. They also have ham sticks, mobile antennas, and meters too. See the whole catalog. Go to pl-259.com. Tower Electronics, the ham's dime store since 1978.
Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Well, Tower Electronics is recovering from a busy hamvention. They were cooking. So they're going to be off for a couple of weeks, but then they'll be back out on the road June the 1st in Newberry, Michigan, up in the Upper Peninsula. They'll be at the Hamfest there, and then the Father's Day Fest on June 16th in Monroe, Michigan. And then July 6th, they'll be in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. But you can visit them anytime you want. Just go to pl-259.com. And it's good to see Scott and Jill out there. And with Hammy, we put some more Hammy pictures out there, so you have to check those out. Ham Talk Live's on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at hamtalklive.com. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you'll see some of those pictures from the Dayton Hamvention last weekend. So now it's time for your calls. So if you've been wanting to ask a question, now's the time to give us a call. It's 812-650-9556 if you have a question, or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live. Let me give you the number again. It's 812-650-9556. And if you're listening to us on WTWW or on the podcast edition, you won't be able to reach us live, obviously, since we're recorded by that point. So, Dennis, while we're waiting to see some of the calls here, I do have a tweet, and we can talk a little bit about some of the sci-fi stuff here, but got a note here from Bill, WZ1L, from Amesbury, Mass., and says, nice to see you at Hamvention, and it's nice to see stories including amateur radio, and we need more, so thank you, Dr. Barrett, for your recent contribution. So that's from Bill, WZ1L.
That's excellent, and I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about science fiction and reality, and we kind of, gave a little bit of an idea of, there's an alien invasion here, and radio is used to do some of the communications. But one of the things that I've been kind of interested in, I'm a bit of a sci-fi guy. I like my Star Trek and my Star Wars. I like both of them. I'm probably a little closer on Star Trek than Star Wars, but on Independence Day and some of these things. But I've also got this book, being the scientist that I am, the physics of Star Trek. And so it kind of talks about, okay, what could really happen and what's just, there's no way. It just doesn't work in the laws of physics. And so it's not going to happen. But, in society, I see a lot of, devices, communicators, well, now we have cell phones. And so it kind of leads us into reality. So with your story, do you see anything, maybe that could actually happen out of this someday?
Well, let me make one comment and say that you and I like the same kind of science fiction, but really we're not pure science fiction aficionados. Real people who follow the genre worry more about the real science and possibilities with real science and less about the storyline. If you were like the big threes, probably Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and then in our time lately, Orson Scott Card. But Star Trek is, Roddenberry pitched it as wagon train to the stars. If you look at Star Wars, it's more fantasy than science fiction because it starts out a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and none of the aliens or anything like that are reality, at least as far as we know. And Stargate, which is connecting two wormholes and traveling around, kind of more like the old Western Paladin or How Gun Will Travel. So we're in an arena to where we're more try to be more entertaining than just science. But in my story, they do develop some new technology that has to do with scrambling radio frequencies and bringing down screens. And there's some discussion about the way they build a dome over the state of Florida that's impenetrable. But it's actually not. It's just you can't see through it. In other words, they fix it reflecting light where it kind of, I guess it masks the state. But the real thing about this one is if you read the book, Neil, the book's based on Revelation 9, which predicts a locust invasion that this book is based on. If you, in the prologue discusses whether that is a symbolic passage and why it would be, but then there's people who believed it was literal, and the colonel, the main character, he always thought it was symbolic till they showed up. Could it happen? Could the locust actually show up and cause trouble? It very well could. It did in the book, but there's a line of reasoning that it's symbolic and it's not going to happen. So I'll leave that to the Bible folks and the sci-fi folks to figure out if they're coming or not. But they're very creative in the ways that they do things in the book. A lot of low-tech things that will shock you. A lot of twists and turns. There's not a lot of subplots because, on television, you're pretty well straightforward, linear in the presentation. But could it happen? Possibly. Could the technology that's being developed in the book actually be technology that you could mask a whole state? Well, more relevant, could you mask a vehicle? Make it virtually invisible to the eye or to a camera. Yes, I'm sure that they're doing that out at Wright-Patterson and at Area 51, and they're probably 30 years ahead of what you and I think is cool right now. So I think this one is more about a storyline than it is sometime in the future going to spin off a Star Trek pad that turns into 50 years later an iPad. So, but that's the reason I watch. That's the reason I read sci-fi. That's the reason I watch sci-fi. I want to see what these guys come up with creatively.
Sounds like we may have to get Dr. Chip Cohen, W1YW, in here on this cloaking thing, since he invented the RF cloak, so he can hide all kinds of stuff. W1YW, I'm going to tell a story on him. He actually downloaded the book, read the book, and left very complimentary remarks about the book on the QRZ thread. And I was quite humbled by that. So, I didn't go out and solicit him. I don't know him personally, but he did that, and it just gives you a good feeling. I mean, you want to hear stuff like that. Well, that's great.
But you kept letting me talk, and you wouldn't stop.
That's what you're supposed to do on this show. It's called Ham Talk Live, so that's what we do.
It up. You talk something that way.
Well, if you want to talk, give us a call. It's 812-650-9556, and we'll keep the doctor around here for just a little bit longer. So if you want, give us a call, 812-650-9556, or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live. Now, Dennis, you've got some insights on people who are getting into the sci-fi thing. And so, let's talk a little bit about, maybe who your target audience is for this kind of a book.
Well, let me, I always hate people that, General Patton said there's lies, worse lies, I won't say exactly what he said, and statistics. And I've always been afraid of people that would get up and quote statistics if they didn't reveal their sources. So my source on this point is the Science Fiction Writers of America, articles were been written by Orson Scott Card, and the Boker Reviews. They're the one that helps authors and publishers, and they'll help you do what you need to do. But both of those groups say that the largest number of readers in sci-fi is 18 to 50 years old. But after the age approaches 55, it starts declining. The number from 55 to 60 and 65, it goes down about 10%. So there's not a lot of us old spark gappers out there sitting around reading sci-fi. Maybe we're watching it on TV, but we're not buying the books. As a genre, sci-fi is if you go to a bookstore, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, go look at the sci-fi section, you say, man, they got a lot of sci-fi books there. Well, look at the titles and you find out it's more fantasy than it is sci-fi. Maybe 80% fantasy type books and 20% sci-fi, because now they call it, for the most part, sci-fi and fantasy. And another statistic, I got this one from Amazon itself, confirmed by Boker. 48% of all science fiction books, whether paperback or ebook or audiobook, are bought on Amazon. 48%. Sci-fi writers say that, you know, the number, their income has gone down considerably because there's less people buying science fiction books. And, you know, you can get into philosophy of why that is, but I think, and here's where you get a little opinion, I think that all the sci-fi technology that's easily understandable has been mined or used. And we get into things now in physics, and you're a science guy. You know, you talk about super colliders and the God particle and all these things. It's hard to write a book on the emerging science that people can easily understand and read and it be entertaining. And I think, you know, that's, of course you could say, well, you guys are not as good as the big three, and I'm the first one to admit that. But there's a lot of reasons, but science fiction is still a good genre. It's just not the top 2 or 3 genres.
Okay, very good. Well, if you have a question, give us a call, 812-650-9556. We're going to finish things up here in just a couple of minutes, so give us a call. Dennis, I want to at least mention here before we close things down tonight, some of your ham radio past with antennas and selling antennas and building antennas, and you've had a couple of companies. Tell us a little bit about Transworld and Horizon.
Well, in around 2003, 2002, I came up with the idea we needed a small, stealthy, almost invisible antenna that worked off the ground, that was easy to service, set up, take down, and that the HOA police wouldn't come and haul you off with. So I had an engineer by the name of Richard Rhodes. To let you know who Richard Rhodes is, if you saw the next to the last Star Trek movie, they introduced a little robot called BB-8. It was like a little orange ball for the head and an orange ball for the body. He invented that and took it, and his company out of Colorado took it to Walmart, and you could go for a few $100s and have your own BB-8. It did quite well. Of course, he does other real robotic products too. But I told Richard what I wanted, and he said it wouldn't work, and I said, it's your job to make it work. I'm paying you. So we came up with an antenna in a modified H form. Looks like a giant capital I, about 6 foot tall, with about 36, about 5 foot arm at the top and 5 foot arm at the bottom, and they were foldable. And we put induction coils and relays, 12-volt relays, in a box. So when you switched a relay with a control box, you can make the antenna electrically longer or shorter based on the band, and you could tune it by separating slightly the induction coils or pushing them closer together. And it was a hit. It would handle 1,500 watts without any problem. It had a 17-degree takeoff angle, which meant your signal would go as far as possible before it hit the curvature of the earth and shot skyward. So you'd get the maximum power on the first bounce. It was low noise. It did not require radials. We released it, and it met with a lot of skepticism. The thing I heard was, well, it's a compromise antenna. It's a half-wave vertical dipole. How's it a compromise antenna? So we had to fight that. But ultimately, it did well. We added other single band antennas, 30 meter, 40 meter, 60 meter. I made 80 meter, which I shouldn't have, but I was going to be lynched if I didn't, because as you know, the law of physics eventually catches up with you. So, but it was efficient for about 50 kilohertz width. So most people talk on a frequency on 80 meters, don't move around a lot. We probably sold 8,000 antennas. Wildly successful. The reviews on eHam and when I would talk to people were great. I had many other things going. I sold the company to my father-in-law, and he was too old to run it. He ran it a couple of years, and he said, "I want to give it back to you." And I said, "No, let's get somebody else." So DX Engineering took it over, and they've been doing well with it, and they've been very pleased with what happens, and it is a great antenna. And I don't get a penny for that testimonial, Neil.
All right. Well, we do have a couple of questions that have come in here on Twitter, so let's jump back over to the sci-fi stuff here for a second. Brett WY7BG wants to know, do you think that the movie and TV industries have ruined science fiction by commercializing it and or watering it down intellectually? And we kind of touched on that a little bit.
Well, let's take I'm going to answer his question, but I have to get there. Let's take a look at an alien invasion storyline. Okay, why do aliens invade the Earth? Well, number one, they want to steal our water. That doesn't make sense, because if they've got technology to come here and steal our water, they can grab a comet, melt it, and get all the liquid water they want without the grief they'd have to put up with for coming here. So I don't like that storyline. The second thing, they come here to enslave us. Do you really think as much grief as the human race is, particularly ham radio operators, that aliens want anything to do with us? They probably roll up the windows on their spaceships when they drive by and tell their kids, "Be quiet, we're at Earth." So slavery stuff, they're going to have artificial intelligence, robotics. That don't fly. And the third thing is, they come down to harvest us and eat us, like in the Series V, and I say, well, we probably taste like chicken. That may be the most viable one of all. But I think we've worn out the storylines, and we're not creative with the storylines. And it's more about making money. Not that there's anything wrong with that, than it is really producing a creative story. But let me say this, Neil. I've got 5 different production companies looking at doing something with Equinox. They tell me to do this thing the right way, it will be somewhere around $1.8 million for a 45-minute episode, which is an hour program. And you know, they've got to get a return. They've got to make, sell the action figures and the cups at Burger King and McDonald's. It's a fact of life. So he's right. They've dumbed it down. The storylines are not creative, but what else are they going to do? But he's 100% right. He is.
All right. Well, thanks, Brett, for your question. And Carl KD9HQT says his suggestion is that the book should be in CW ready. Do you think you can pull that off?
Actually, I probably could. Amazon has got a company that ACX that turns books into audio books, and they're doing it right now, and I don't know how good it's going to be. The guy that they sent to me is pretty good, but that's not a bad idea. Is to do it that way, or maybe even CW. But that's a novel approach. I think there are a lot of hams that would prefer it to be in that format. So that's a good one. I like that. Now that
takes care of your formatting issues.
Yeah, it would solve them a lot.
Of course, it may take you a few days to copy it, but
that's right.
No.
We could put it
Who knows?
we could put it up on a podcast or something and let it play, and
There you go.
they could get it in we call it spurts. I'm told that this book is 7.5 hours of audio book. That's what they tell me based on how many words it is and everything. So maybe CW would, if you could copy fast enough or read it, you could maybe be able to cut that way down from 7.5 hours.
Well, Dennis, it's been a pleasure to have you here on the show, and good luck with the book. Hope it continues to do well, and your audio book that'll be coming up. And thanks for coming on and telling us all about this book.
I really appreciate you having me, Neil. I appreciate the folks listening and the folks that wrote in and had commentary. I love hams. I love ham radio. I love being around hams. But they're just like other groups of people. There's some at times you could really just reach out and choke them. But that's just the way life is. So I'm going to have thick skin. I'm gonna stand there and take the slings and arrows, and who knows? There may be a sequel to Equinox one of these days.
Well, there you go. Well, congratulations on the book, and again, wish your continued success with it.
Thank you, Neil.
All right, well, that is a wrap for this week's Ham Talk Live. Thanks to Dr. Dennis Barrett in for ECW, and everybody out there in cyberspace for listening and typing in tonight. And we'll invite you back next week, Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, just go over to hamtalklive.com. And if you like the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That helps us get the word out about the show a little bit faster. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.